Hollybush Garden Centre and Aquarium has grown and now has even more value for money. Their new bigger and better premises means they can offer everything for the gardening or fish enthusiast. And on Mother's Day, Sunday the 21st of March, Beacon's Will Tudor will be broadcasting live at Hollybush between 10 and 2. Meet Willie and the gang and buy a present your mother will love. Hollybush Garden Centre and Aquarium, Warston Road, Shares Hill, 500 yards off Junction 11 of the M6.
Few mist patches, glad that one's over with, and a slight frost overnight. The low freezing point, 32 degrees Fahrenheit. Later today, another mild day. It's going to be dry with long sunny periods and a maximum temperature of 11 Celsius, 52 degrees Fahrenheit. The outlook Thursday and Friday will be dry and sunny in the day, but at night it's going to be cold with a ground frost. The temperature now, 1 Celsius, 34 degrees Fahrenheit. Okie dokie, me old culture lovers, it's the Midnight Line on Beacon and WABC, and tonight, because you asked for it, and I can't think of anything else to do either. No, that isn't true. That isn't true. I think heaps of things. We could have discussed the Maastricht Treaty. That'd be interesting, wouldn't it? Right, or even we could have discussed whether or not that large planet just by the moon is Jupiter. Fascinating subject for a phone show, I would have thought. Not. Right, what are we doing? Well, over the past couple of free-for-alls, people have phoned up and said, I want to talk about the level of crime, especially violent crime, and the incidents of murders that are taking place in society, because it seems to be getting worse and worse and worse. I mean, you could argue that it isn't. It's just that communications being what they are these days, you tend to hear about them more than you would have in sort of the 50s and the 60s. Or actually, that's a totally crap argument. Forget that, because then you have the crime figures coming out, don't you, saying, yep, it's up, violent crime is up. So, for one reason or another, life in the 1990s appears to be quite a cheap commodity, quite a cheap thing. People don't think, it would appear, a great deal about taking life. A lot of people over the past week, 2 weeks on the free-for-alls have said, there's no way round it, it's time that we brought back the death penalty. Now, we discussed this a few times over the years, over the past 5 years, and I am still no closer to making my mind up about what I think. I sort of veer from, yeah, hang them from the nearest lamppost, to that would be a cruel and unusual punishment. It's a matter, I suppose, for your own conscience. So what I want to ask you between now and 2 o'clock, because that's when the lines are open till, probably round about then anyway. What I want to ask you is, what does your conscience say? Is it right for society to take a life? A life for a life, says so in the Bible, doesn't it? Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, life for a life. What if your conscience is easy with the fact that society, as represented by the forces of law, should be able to instruct the termination of somebody's life? Then what do you believe it would achieve? Would it achieve anything? Is it a deterrent, or is it just revenge? Does it really matter? Does it really matter? Or do you take the basic view that doesn't really matter if it doesn't achieve anything else? What it does achieve is that whoever committed the crime won't commit it again. Well, then, if you look back into the annals of British judicial history, there's all sorts of sort of miscarriages of justice knocking around there. One of the most recent ones was the Guildford 4. Now, the Guildford 4, or was it the Renault 5? No, it was definitely the Guildford 4. The Birmingham 6. The Birmingham 6 were sent to prison. Now, they were sent to prison on forensic evidence, which at the time was meant to be state-of-the-art forensic evidence, and turned out that it wasn't reliable. So you've always got to legislate, I would imagine, that the system can make mistakes. Now, when you're dealing with somebody's life, maybe an idea to vote against the reintroduction of capital punishment, because the system cannot be relied upon to be 100% accurate. You could say 150% accurate, but that's a meaningless statistic. It has to be 100% accurate. Or you might say, well, yeah, you've got to look at the greater good. As long as it's not me standing on the scaffold waiting for the last drop, 1 or 2 mistakes They were acceptable before capital punishment was abandoned in the UK. Are they acceptable now? Also, look at the Americans, because we do everything the Americans tell us to anyway. But I mean, the Americans are in a situation now where they have speeded up the number of executions taking place. They've suddenly decided, for one reason or another, and this involves, I think it has the backing of the Democrats. Basically, they've said, right, you lot, you've been sitting on death row for far too long. About time we either gassed, fried, or hanged you. And one guy, I mean, typical, only happened in America. He actually had a choice. Yes, sir, would you like to be gassed, barbecued, or hung? Oh, I'd like to be hung, thank you. Only happened in America, that. So, it's a matter for your own conscience. I want to know what your conscience says on it. 754-123 in Wolverhampton, 236-235 in Shrewsbury. I'll initialise the computer. We'll have two columns. We'll have the hang-em high. And we'll have the, what shall we have, sandal-wearing... No, not lefty, that's a bit unfair, isn't it? Sandal-wearing, mega-conscience person. That'll do. So, is it right or wrong for society, as represented by law and order, to take human life in the form of reintroducing the death penalty? Have we got to a point now in the country where you say, right, enough's enough, I refuse to live in a society where teenage girls can walk into an old spinster's house, never done any harm to anybody, the spinster in question, and they garroted her with a dog lead. Now, something has to be done about that. What is that something? Maybe you believe that the death penalty is too extreme. Maybe you've got your own ideas about what you do instead. In which case, we want to hear from you. 754-123 in Wolverhampton, 236-235 in Shrewsbury. And before we go to the lines, it's the last week of Ian's fabulous full-colour map. And it's going to be replaced next week by something even stupider. Which, what I want you to do is to send your photographs in. I need to start now, because the first 36 get one of me back. Because we'll take some... I'll just get my Kodak Instamatic, my little brownie, and just take some photos, because we've got heaps of requests. So I thought, alright, and have a picture of me and the bike. First 36, what you do is you send your photograph in, because I want to see what my listenership looks like, and then we'll show your photograph on the radio. Hey, the only radio show in the world that shows photographs. What a stupid idea. Alright, who's been writing? Well, first of all, Redmond. Well, no, that's where the card comes from. It comes from Redmond. Not Phil Redmond, producer extraordinaire of Brookie. And if you're wondering where Redmond is, it's actually in America. Talking of the States. And it comes from Kim Gillett. Now, Kim used to be a bloke, but he had a sex change, shaved her legs, and he was a she. And Kim's taking a walk on the wild side and says, "Hi Ian, greetings from Grungeville, otherwise known as Seattle, Emerald City, capital of the Great Pacific Northwest. The reference to the grunge is a fashion way of life that originated here. It's about being laid back, cool, hip, trendy, or lack of it, and he's buying second-hand clothes by the pound weight, combining torn jeans with plaid, old cardigans, and anything else grungy." There you go, know all about it now, don't you? "I'm settling into my new jobs, surroundings well, but I miss Brierley Hill, home of the stars. The Albion Cradley Speedway will soon be on my mind. As you know, I came here to escape prejudice and unemployment, so please wish anybody listening who is unemployed a good job, and soon. If anyone cares to write to me via Beacon, I'll refund the station's forwarding postage. I hope to call you up soon. We're 8 hours behind, and have a natter." So there you go. Kim was on the show once. Kim's now disappeared and gone. Well, I don't think the map quite extends that far, actually. But never mind, eh? Right, who else has been writing to me? Jay Wilkinson, Brookbank Road. "Good morning, Dudley." There we go, there's Dudley again. Veritable forest of pins around the Dudley area. "Dear that Ian Perry, on the 1st of March you mounted me on your map somewhere in the West Midlands. Above is my address. Could you please mount me again? Oh, much appreciated. I love the show. Are Ken and Eric close personal friends?" No, not really. Well, no, not at all, actually. Also writing to me is... H. Clee from Pershaw. "Listened to last night's programme with great interest. Just why are we here? Just after the war, it was discovered that all the elements were present in cosmic rays. It follows that the Earth and all it contains originated in the stars. It caused me to write the following poem." It's a very good poem as well. And it's all about poetry. Great gaseous sphere, may after a curry. Mystery unfold, how can such radiant glory die, doomed to decay in bitter cosmic cold, in dense, impotent story atrophy. Or something. There we go, thanks for that. Love a bit of poetry. We love a bit of poetry because we're very cultured on the Midnight Line at Beacon and WABC. It says here, Dear Ian, a flag from Cheltenham for your board. Is this the first from Cheltenham? Hell no, ma'am. I was in Nam, Cheltenham. Have you ever been here? Yes, I do. I've got a very good friend who lives in Cheltenham who is A magistrate, and B, a tax inspector. And he's called Basil. We really enjoy your show, and that's from Jane Abbotswood. So if you're up before the Beak, and is this Howard? That's it, Basil Howard. So if you're up before the Beak, and it's Big Baz, just plead guilty and he'll give you all sorts of light sentences, and just tell him you know me. That's all you need to do. Finally, Chris Hathaway says, my eyes are bloodshot, I got bags under my eyes, I'm tired. Why? Because I can't sleep at night until I know where to buy that used pond I've always wanted. Get down there and buy it. Anyway, please mount me on your map over in Bromsgrove. Morning, Bromsgrove, there you go. And a friend of mine in Redditch, and has to be difficult, don't it? Yeah. There we go. Just up the road, Emma Southwell. She likes that kind of thing. What sort of thing? Use ponds. So they tell me. Yours, Chris Hathaway. I signed a photo when and if. You mentioned UFOs a couple of weeks ago. Here's my personal evidence. It's genuine, honest. Now hold this up to camera 3, just there. And it's a picture of a UFO. It actually looks more like a sort of lampshade to me. Sorry to break your heart. As you say, life, Jim, but not as we know it. Okie dokie, Midnight Line on Beacon and WABC. Can you reconcile it with your conscience to bring back the death penalty? Lots of people over the past couple of weeks have been saying, we've had enough, that's what we want back. And first on the lines, James. Morning, James.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Good.
Can you reconcile it with your conscience, James?
Absolutely. I've always been a great believer in prevention. Whatever crime you're talking about, prevention is better than cure. And I believe that the death penalty is the greatest deterrent going. I think what a lot of people in this country think when they talk about the death penalty, it has to be hanging, which is a bit barbaric. I don't believe we have to have hanging. I do believe that people could be put to sleep with an injection. And after all, with the modern technology we have today, the DNA, etc., and I really believe that if there was a referendum, it would be brought back. You mentioned yourself when you mentioned about the Birmingham 6, the Guildford 4, the Birmingham 6 who were released. I believe the police were under a tremendous amount of pressure to get convictions. But my point is this, and if I could just finish.
Yes, sorry,
was
James.
that quite simply, that having been released, etc., one of them did say the only way for the British servicemen to come back from Ireland was in body bags.
He later retracted that.
Sorry?
He later retracted that.
Yes, indeed, but the fact that he retracted it doesn't make any difference to me. The fact that he made the statement in the first place, was he guilty or was he not? Now, I do believe today we have this technology, and I wonder how many of the listeners tonight saw Oprah Winfrey, you mentioned about America, on Saturday night, whereby in the state of Texas, in actual fact, the average penalty today, because of overcrowding in prisons, people do 23 days for each year. And one example on that program, which was absolutely horrific, was that a chap who was locked up, he'd actually sat in the electric chair twice, had a stay of execution twice, and then in 1972, the death penalty was abolished and they were committed to life. He came out and he murdered six young ladies after coming out. And now, how do you comprehend that?
So what you seem to be saying is the reintroduction of the death penalty would A, be economic, and B, would you believe it would act as a deterrent?
Absolutely.
But surely nobody goes, I mean, I agree it's economic, I mean, I'd hate to see the state of Texas' electricity bill at the end of every quarter, but apart from that, it is pretty economic. Now, how can it act as a deterrent?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, you would not get the people who go out to do crimes, etc., would not carry loaded guns or etc., etc., because they would know at the end of the day what the end result could be.
But then wouldn't that make criminals more likely to go out carrying guns, because they then have nothing to lose by shooting the way out of a situation?
No, not at all. Not at all. I firmly believe that, if you take the death penalty, and I object to the fact that we have today, I'll just give an example. If the do-gooders had had their way in this country, Myra Hindley would have been out now, right? And at the end of the day, I object to paying taxes to keep that woman in prison, for example, and at the same time she's taken up a position in a prison that could be used for somebody else for a less criminal offence.
Doesn't that make it a sort of a society as bad as the perpetrator of the original act?
No, I'll tell you what, you can talk, it's like you do gooders and whatever. When people have committed a crime like murder, like we say, as you said, the intro to the programme, about what's happening today in this country, and I do believe, again, when we talked about this silly thing about joyriders, which is a bad name for it anyway.
Well, I believe they're being called grief riders now.
Grief riders. Okay, I accept that. What I'm saying is, where you've got an extreme problem, you have to take extreme measures to correct it. And I do believe if we had a referendum today, and bear in mind, we'll wipe out the hanging thing, people could be put to sleep very quietly. And the point is, they would certainly not do it again, would they?
No, I think that is one sterling argument for capital punishment, is that once you've actually executed somebody, they are not going to do it again.
They are not going to do it again. There is no chance of them doing it again. And as long as you're holding someone in a prison, and I mean, there's so many examples. Even today, we don't have capital punishment now, but we have people who are locked up supposedly for life. And what is life today? And there's a danger that they can get out, and it's been proved they do get out, and they commit the same crimes again. And at the end of the day, I mean, I object to that.
So what would you then bring back judicial execution for, however it was done?
I'll bring back execution. There is only one crime that I would have a debate on, and that is a crime of passion, where you're talking about a domestic situation, but where you talk about the children who are murdered today, policemen who are murdered today. It is murder. And okay, the only situation, as far as I'm concerned, where there could be a bit of doubt is domestic, where possibly a woman, a wife, who's probably been battered for years and years, and the worm turns. Now that is a different situation.
Well, in the overwhelming majority of murder cases, the victim knew the assailant.
Yeah, but that doesn't alter anything. What I am saying is, are you saying to me that it's domestic, or are you saying to me that it's just that the victim knew?
Well, there is a relationship of some description there.
Well, again, you might say that. What I'm saying is, to me, that doesn't alter anything.
Would you put age limits on it?
Not at all. Not at all. What has age got to do with murder?
These two teenage girls,
yeah,
that have been detained indefinitely. Yeah, teenagers under the age of 18.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood you. When you talk about how young or how old do they have to be before you sentence them to death? Yeah, that's a different situation. Certainly, I would say this, and bear in mind what happened in Liverpool and whatever, where you're talking about two 10-year-olds. I wouldn't like to be the one to put an age limit on it. But what I am saying is that if you bring the death penalty back, I mean, it's like everything else. Age depends. I mean, you're old enough to vote at 18. Isn't that correct? 18 years old.
You can serve your country at 16.
And you can serve your country at 16. So there's a fair debate there. But in general, what I am saying is that I think it's time we brought the death penalty back without any shadow of a doubt.
Okie dokie. We've got you in the hang 'em high or inject 'em deep column.
I would inject them deep.
All right then, James.
Okay.
Very forceful views.
Thank you.
Ta-ra.
Bye-bye.
754-123 in Wolverhampton, 236-235 in Shrewsbury. We're talking about whether or not you can reconcile it with your conscience that the law puts back on the statute books the option to judicially execute people. Should we bring back hanging or lethal injections? To introduce lethal injections? Or do you believe that it is fundamentally wrong for the state to take a life? James says, in the weight of the increase in crime that's going on right at the moment, he says you have to take drastic measures. The death penalty is a drastic measure. That's the one you take. He says it's a deterrent. He says it's also more economic. Who have we got next? We have got Aid. Morning, Aid.
Morning.
Good morning. Very forceful stuff from James. Do you agree with him?
Yeah. Do I agree with him? Some of the stuff, but not all of it.
Would you introduce some form of judicial killing?
Right. First, I've got 2 points to make. Firstly, about the judicial system as it is. We've got judges, JPs, magistrates, call them what you want. They're just as corrupt as the people that they serve. You've got judges that go with prostitutes, you've got judges that are homosexual, and all the rest of it. Who are they to pass judgment on us if they can't get their own lives in order?
Well, we did actually have a case, didn't we, last year, where allegedly the DPP, Director of Public Prosecutions, was caught driving in second gear around a red light district.
Yeah. Now, those are supposed to be our peers that teach us values and set us guidelines. If they can't do it for themselves, how can they do it for us?
Well, presumably, I mean, when they do sort of trip up, then they are as liable under the law as everybody else, aren't they?
Yeah. As I say, with magistrates, JPs, judges, tripping up and being caught out, where does that leave the ordinary layperson?
So are you saying that because of the judicial system that we have at the moment, then nobody, as far as you're concerned, or few people, are actually adept enough at what they're doing to be able to pass a death sentence on somebody?
What I'm trying to say is, once the judges have got their own house in order, then perhaps they can try and get our house in order.
Although you're not actually tried by a judge, are you? You're sentenced by a judge.
You're sentenced by a judge, but...
you're tried by 12 judged men and women and true and things.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, it is the judge that passes the sentence.
And you don't believe that they are psychologically adept enough to do that?
No, I believe that that they are a bit too corrupt. For a person that's supposed to be stainless, with a reputation...
But then aren't we talking... I mean, there are wider implications to that, aren't there? What we're saying is that the system isn't reliable enough.
That's correct.
So if the system isn't reliable enough to decide fairly whether or not a man or woman loses their life, then we shouldn't even be considering it.
No.
So until the system changes...
We shouldn't even think about it. But, I mean, this brings on to the second point as to prisons and deterrence. I worked on Bicester Prison just outside Oxford. It's a brand new modern prison. The guys that go in there will have the life of luxury. They're spending millions upon pounds on brand new prisons to give these guys a life of luxury.
I wouldn't actually call being locked in a small room for 23 hours a day luxurious, but...
I would.
Well, you'd rather be locked up?
Well, you go back to the last century where you got them chained together and cells together and this, that and the other. I don't think that go back to it with hard manual labour.
But then if that system had worked, presumably we wouldn't have had criminals then.
Take the American system of the farms and road gangs and all that. Surely we'd be better putting our prisoners to do hard manual labour, or labour that people don't want to do.
Well, like play for Arsenal.
Well, or Shrewsbury, one or the other.
They did. They won. Did they win tonight, Shrewsbury?
I'm not sure, but the Wolves did.
No, they didn't. No, they didn't. I'm just being informed. So, you would not then, until the system changes, bring back capital punishment?
No, I believe firmly that once the judge's house is in order, then we can try and get our house in order.
All right, mate, thanks for your call. There we go. Aid says, get your own house in order before you start talking about bringing back capital punishment. He doesn't believe that the judicial system is actually adept enough or secure enough at the moment to have that on the statute books. OK, what do you believe? Can you reconcile it with your conscience, or would you reconcile it with your conscience if we brought back capital punishment? Is it a good idea? What does it achieve? James says it's a deterrent. I have my doubts as to whether or not it is a deterrent. You may believe it is, or may believe it isn't, or may even believe it doesn't matter if it's a deterrent or not, because the actual idea is to inflict punishment, suffering, pain and death on somebody who's perpetrated a particularly nasty crime. 754-123 in Wolverhampton, 236-235 in Shrewsbury. It's the Midnight Line, and we'll be back after these.
Hello, Graham Hall here. Now, how would you like the chance to win £1,000 whilst helping raise money for charity? Well, on April the 12th, you can join in the sponsored Treasure Trail in conjunction with M&B in order to raise much-needed cash for the Baby Lifeline appeal, raising funds for baby care units in the West Midlands area. To help, just pick up a sponsorship form from selected M&B taverns in the Wolverhampton area, or the offices of Beacon Radio here on the Tettenhall Road, Wolverhampton. West Midlands Travel have also offered their support to this most worthwhile cause. So call us now on 0902 757 211 for more information. The Treasure Hunt in association with Mitchells and Butlers Taverns on Easter Monday.
Special deals from Essential Garage.
Essential Cars. Essential service. Essential Garage.
But this month only, Essential Garage have extra special deals on the Vauxhall Nova range. Most come with a 3-year free warranty, and you can buy on the Vauxhall Choices program. There's a great part exchange deal, no matter what your make of car. You'll always get Essential service and a Vauxhall deal that can't be beat. From Essential Garage, Dudley Road, Wolverhampton.
Essential Garage. Yeah, Essential Vauxhall. Yeah, Essential Vauxhall.
Written details on request.
Your complete guide to a better night's sleep. Point 1. Make sure your bed fits. Not just your bedroom, that is, but you and your partner. If a bed is too short or too narrow, you could suffer from more disturbed or uncomfortable nights than you need to. Even when we think we are sleeping like logs, we are in fact tossing and turning, maybe as much as 60 or 70 times a night. For further details on the right size bed for you, call Beacon Reception now on Wolverhampton 757 211 or call into Coles for your free fact sheet. This helpful series of bed buying tips was brought to you by Coles, Great Bridge Road, Bilston.
The new Mayfair Carpet Store is now open.
We got what you want at the price you want to pay.
Hundreds of rolls of carpets on display at prices you won't believe.
Make your choice and take it away.
Whether it's plain cord at 99 pence a square yard or quality Axminster from only £9.99 a square yard, Mayfair Carpets won't be beaten for price. Mayfair Carpets, open every day in Park Lane, just off the A460 Cannock Road, Wolverhampton. Phone Wolverhampton 726 951.
Midnight Line on Beacon and WABC, 754-123 in Wolverhampton, 236-235 in Shrewsbury. We're talking about whether or not in this day and age, with crime on the increase, it'd be a good or bad idea to bring back the death penalty. Next on the lines, we've got on this line, which one did I put him on? I think he's on this line here, Captain Napalm. It's Eric. Good, yeah, that's Eric. Morning, Eric! Complete with the most famous catchphrase in Shropshire and the West Midlands. And here it comes. What a fabulous catchphrase that is. Years of professional training to get to a catchphrase like that. Not something you discover overnight. Morning, Eric. Or not, as the case may be.
Good morning.
Good morning, Eric.
Good morning, Ian.
Now then, let me guess what you're going to say.
Yeah, hang am I.
Yes, so...
I agree with everything that Jim says.
There's hitherto undiscovered tribes in the Amazon that knew you were going to say that. Hang 'em high. Why do you hang 'em? What does it achieve?
What will it achieve? Well, just look at the state of the country now. Look at that young woman, 24 years of age, battered to death, found on a golf course. Right?
Yeah.
Look at the old lady of 90 years of age, died from her injuries. Another old lady of 81 years of age, 2 girls broke her hip, cut her face. Do you think there's something shouldn't come back?
But doesn't brutality breed brutality? I mean, the Nazis, for example...
No, brutality doesn't breed brutality. Once they're out of the road, they've gone, they're done with.
But the Nazis ruled their population with the German population with a fist of iron, but I mean, it wasn't a particularly pleasant place to live.
The Nazis did the Jews, and biggest part of them were found for them as was responsible.
No, I mean within the German society, yeah. I mean they did things like behead burglars and that sort of thing.
Look,
I mean that's just inhumane, isn't it?
Huh?
That's inhumane.
You're on about humane?
Yeah, I mean we're meant to be a humane society.
You're on about the Germans.
No, well I've changed that now. We are meant to be a humane society, are we not?
We're supposed to be.
Well, what is humane about society officially putting people to death? I mean, it's back to biblical times and chucking rocks, isn't it?
Well, what's humane about a person going out and killing an old man, an old woman?
Absolutely nothing, but there's an old saying that 2 wrongs don't make a right.
But therefore, if he's committed the crime and they know that he's committed the crime, hang him high.
But what would that achieve, apart from obviously killing somebody?
Like Jim said, if they knew that bit of rope was over the wheel, it'd bash them from carrying their guns and their knives.
But people don't go out and commit a crime believing they're going to get caught, do they? So how can it be a deterrent?
They got suspicion they get catched.
What about the argument I put to Jim? He said it wouldn't happen. I believe it might. That all you would do is make a corner criminal more desperate to get out of a situation, so he's more likely to resort to the use of firearms.
Well, I don't think it would. What do they want the submarine for?
Well, good question. I think we ought to melt it down and make novelty key rings.
They got that. They reckon that's a deterrent, don't they?
Well, according to the 0-0 option, it's meant to be a deterrent, yeah.
Yeah. If the rope was over that wheel, that'd be a deterrent.
But the only reason that's a deterrent is because supposedly when we were enemies with the Eastern Bloc, now we're all chums, of course, they used to look across, see our Trident submarine going up and down, and think, well, better not shoot any missiles at them because they'll shoot some back. But I don't believe that it would be on a murderer's mind that they may get hanged if they get caught.
But Ian, I still believe that the birch should be brought back for these young ones, and I still say that the rope should be brought back for the adults.
So Bircham and Ropeham?
The birch and the rope. They can't hang young people under 18.
If it's that effective, then...
Huh?
If it's that effective, if hanging is that effective, why did people still remain, or still get hanged in the 50s and 60s, when they knew that if they got caught for murder, there was a very good chance the state would take their life for it?
They was hung.
Yeah, I know they were hung, but that's what I'm saying, that having the death penalty didn't...
And the reason as they do it today is because of Silverman, the pig that turned around to abolish capital punishment. And then he died about a month after.
But then people still committed crimes, didn't they? They still committed murder when capital punishment was on the statute books.
Yeah, and they paid the penalty for it, didn't they?
Yeah, what I'm saying is it didn't stop anything. It didn't stop people doing it.
Not today, it won't.
No, but it didn't then. But it never has done.
There wasn't so much crime in the 1930s, as I can tell you. There wasn't so much crime then as there is today.
Maybe it just wasn't reported.
Eh?
Maybe. Well, I mean, we didn't have news bulletins then, did we? Well, I mean, we did, but I mean, they weren't sort of like we have today.
We had news bulletins on the radio in the 30s, just the same.
Yeah, but for example, if there'd been a murder in Carlisle, you wouldn't probably find out about it, would you?
Well, maybe not, but it don't matter which way you look at it. I can remember in the 50s when Griffin was when he killed that poor woman at
Crippen.
Griffin, when he killed Mrs. Edge from Ketley at that public and took a bottle of whiskey, and then when they catched up with him, he was in the Tontine drinking a bottle of whiskey at the time they took him up. They had no... he only had a week to live after they hung him.
But it didn't stop him. Like I say, the threat, the deterrent value didn't affect his course of behaviour, did it?
It would have stopped it, Ian, if they'd have left it alone. I still say that... But in this world today, it's a bloody sick world.
So aren't we just making it sicker? If we reintroduce capital punishment?
You can't get it any sicker, Ian. You can't get it any sicker. I'll tell you something now, it's like that chap, the Scotchman and the Welshman. He went to the doctor.
This is a
he thought
joke,
he
isn't it?
turned round
Okay.
and he said to the doctor he got pains in his back passage. So the doctor turned around and asked him to go over the other side of the room and drop his trousers. He bent over and he said, oh yes, he said, when you go home, he said, I want you to put on your backside, he says, some tea leaf poultices. He said, if it's no better, come back in the morning. So when he went back the next morning, he said, it's no better, doctor. He said, well, give his letter, he said, and go down to the hospital and let them have a look at it. So he went down to the doctors, down to the hospital. He said, the specialist, he said, what you got the matter? And he told him. He said, he said, go over there, he said, and drop your trousers. He said, let me have a look at it. He bent down and dropped the top of his trousers and bent over. Oh, he said, my son, I don't know about you having piles, he said, but according to the reading of your tea leaves, you're going on a long journey.
No, Eric.
Yeah?
Very good, Eric. A smile, a song and an opinion. That's what we want.
Yeah.
All right, then, but you still think it's a deterrent?
Hang 'em I.
All right, then, Captain Napalm.
Hang 'em I.
Ta-ra.
Cheers.
There we go, Captain Napalm. He says hang them high, although didn't seem to register the fact that people were still murdering when we had the death penalty, otherwise nobody would have been hung, would they? On this line here we've got Paul. Morning, Paul.
Good morning.
Good morning, Captain Napalm in real napalm
How am I
mode.
supposed to follow that?
I don't know, just don't tell any jokes.
I'm going to have to give me a catchphrase like that.
Oh, yeah, they don't just come overnight. Years of professional training.
Yeah.
Years of professional training, Paul.
Yeah, well, I think the first thing is that you're exactly right that it's never been a deterrent.
Does it need to be?
Well, the first thing society's got to decide is whether it wants to bring back hanging as a deterrent or whether it's just revenge. If society wants to bring it back as revenge, well, society will make that decision. But it's certainly no point in bringing it back as a deterrent.
Because it doesn't deter?
It never has it, as you said.
Well, presumably, if it had ever acted as a deterrent, then capital crimes would have been stamped out somewhere at the end of the 12th century, where everybody would have suddenly realised it was a really bad idea.
It's amazing how many Christians come across with the idea that hanging should be brought back, and they start off with the idea that it's a deterrent, and when you finally got through